warm welcome to the students of class 8 once again. Now this week we are again back with our story, The Macbeth, the continuation of the story. We are already reading the story in our online classes, but here we are going to discuss about the themes today. Now there are 4 themes in Macbeth. Now this is the objective of your lesson today, themes of Macbeth. There are 4 themes, but we are going to discuss about 2 today in this class, in this video. So we are on the threshold of completing our syllabus already, and this week's video will be the last 2 videos of the session for you. Now let us look at, before going on discussing about the 2 themes today, we are going to first discuss what the atmosphere of the story is in Macbeth. So now let us discuss something about the atmosphere of the story, because that is going to set the tone for discussion of the first theme, which is fear and courage. First, we need to know what was the atmosphere of the play, of the story like, in order to know about the theme. So over here, if we look at the board, we will see that the atmosphere. Why are we studying about the atmosphere of Macbeth, of this story? Why is it important? Because simply it is the result and cause of the story's unity. What results from the atmosphere of the story? What causes the atmosphere of the story to be like this? That is simply giving a lot of credit for the plot development, okay, of the story of Macbeth. So we see that the atmosphere, the setting, it develops in the Celtic Scotland. It is said that the first recorded event or first recorded knowledge about the Celts were found in Greek philosophy at around 517 BC. And Scotland, they had all these myths, they had all these ill omens that they believed in, superstitions. And the atmosphere of Macbeth is basically, it is based in Scotland. We know Macbeth is a Scottish noble, Duncan is the king of Scotland, and it revolves around that time. It revolves around those superstitions and everything. That is why we find the opening, the play opening, basically the story over here, opening with the scene of a horrific and superstitious atmosphere, okay, where there is disorder and darkness, the image of the heath, where the witches meet to do something absolutely evil, okay. So that all talks about how horrific the entire atmosphere is going to become. Other than that, when we delve more into the character of Macbeth after his meeting with the witches, we get to know his world, and his world is engulfed in darkness from the very first time. He's a great warrior, we know that. And not only that, when he meets the witches, he is filled up with ambition to do something extraordinary, and that involves a lot of dark power. And we understand how he is supposed to bring his darkness into the world of the story, into the other lives of characters, when Duncan and his train of attendants enter his castle at Inverness. Lady Macbeth, along with Macbeth, plans this treacherous murder of the King of Scotland, and that is exactly by ambition. And his entry, it marks, they say that how he is going to experience a sunless morning, which means his life is going to end. The atmosphere around the castle of Macbeth, the call of the raven, everything amounts to the raven being the harbinger of death, being the messenger of death. You know, all talks about Celtic Scotland. It all talks about Macbeth's world is so dark, about the fact that it is so dark. Other than that, there is always a mystery in the play. The very first thing that Macbeth says about the witches. Who are they? Which is that? Which is that person? Who is that bloody child? These are the questions that characters keep on asking. The ghost, when Banquo enters the banquet scene, the scene where Macbeth sees Banquo's ghost after he's murdered him, that scene itself, it is full of mystery. People don't know what is going on. They are mysterious about it. They are feeling absolutely perturbed by what Macbeth was doing. They are amazed. Obviously, amazement. What happens after the death of Duncan? There is a place where amazed to how he sends the murderers in in Macduff's castle. Okay, let's see that scene is abound in amazement and the uncertainty of everything. To what is going to happen. The prophecies that was made to Macbeth the second time he visits the witches, where he sees these three apparitions, three ghosts or three spirits, who prophesy about his future. That is completely uncertainty. Whatever they say, whether there's this child who's the crowned child who is crowned prince, he doesn't know what is going to happen. The second apparition, that the one who's covered in blood, that comes to him. So it talks about uncertainty in Macbeth's mind, uncertainty in the audience's mind. Those who are watching or reading the story for the first time, they would be knowing how uncertain everything is, what they have to go through. They don't know what will be the end of it. And there is a lot of blood and gore in the entire atmosphere, and blood itself is something, gore itself is something that induces the atmosphere, a dark atmosphere, a fearful atmosphere in us. It just fills us up with terror, and we want to stay as much as away from it. So definitely we find that fear is one of the predominant emotions in the entire play. There is an atmosphere not only in Macbeth, but in the other characters as well. I'm going to explain more of it when we elaborate on the theme. So there is obviously a lot of strangeness in the entire atmosphere. A strangeness is something that is pretty closely associated with fear, because whatever we feel is strange or alien to us or foreign to us, we fear that. As humans, we fear that because we feel something strange. We won't be able to comply with it. We won't be compatible with it. Therefore, we have this sort of a fear raging in us when we come into contact with something weird. So in the same manner, when we think about the witches boiling all sorts of weird particles in the cauldron, when they are churning out a spell, churning out a potion that is setting the tone, setting the mood for Macbeth's arrival, which is absolutely dark, because at that point of time, Macbeth has completely accepted his evil nature. He's a cold-blooded murderer, and he can go to great ends, he can go to great depths in order to retain his throne in Scotland. So that is truly strange about him. That is a strange feeling that he accepts, that he brings in himself, and it amounts to the strangeness also in the atmosphere. Obviously, all of these things, they are but the result of something supernatural that is happening, whether it is the witches, whether it is Banquo's ghost, whether it is the three apparitions, and obviously the supernatural in terms of Lady Macbeth's illusion or Macbeth's illusion. So it all amounts to the gloomy and dark atmosphere of the story. Now this brings us to the first theme which the entire story is based on, and that is fear and courage. Now fear and courage are two opposite emotions, or two opposite entities. Fear is the absence of courage, or maybe the bliss of not knowing what courage is. And over here in this story, we get an image of fear at every juncture, at every scene. Whether Shakespeare is building the tension of the play in there, or he's releasing the tension by bringing out some comic scene in it, or some some different idea in it, it gives out the image of fear. We get to see Macbeth's courage in the war. He is termed as valor's minion. Minion meaning a servant, or valor is like his master. He's so brave. So valor is another term for bravery, a heightened term for bravery. So he is very courageous out there in the war. He's known as Bellona's bridegroom, which means Bellona is like the goddess of war, and he must be married to Bellona. It's just an expression that has been given, okay, to express how he was courageous in the war, how he fought it like a true warrior, like a true Scottish noble. But it changes to his ambition to be the king. I won't say he was courageous enough to do this. I would use a negative term for courage. He had the guts to do this. He was gutsy enough to do this. Guts at time, it spells out negative. He had the, he had this audacity in himself in order to become this king, to go against the throne of Scotland, to be a traitor somewhat. We know he is, and he doesn't want to accept that. He justifies himself as not being the traitor for quite a long time, but we, at the audience, we know. Therefore, when he goes to commit the deed in Duncan's chamber, he oscillates between the two emotions, fear and courage. He oscillates, and he thinks that Duncan is supposed to be his kin. He wants to show courage. He feels the fear of the consequences. So he oscillates between the two. Fear doesn't only have that supernatural effect in the story. It's not only the cause of some supernatural happenings. It is also something that, the fear of being guilty, the fear of being discovered. Okay, so that is also one of the aspects of fear in this story. Lady Macbeth, she brings about the courage, or I would say again, she instills in him that evil nature in Macbeth. She encourages him to do the deed. Okay, she talks to him, she shows her iron self-control. He tries to, with her control and power, she tries to encourage Macbeth to do the thing. She implores him to do the thing. And what do we see after the deed is done? Fear has infected everybody. Macduff goes and cries out, horror, horror, horror. Things that happen after. Banquo is completely doused in fear, and that explains his departure from the scene, his departure from the story that resulted in his death. So he feared, if it is not Macbeth is it not Macbeth who has done this? So his friend who has done this. So in a way, fear infects all. At the end of the play, at the end of the story, Lady Macbeth is doused in fear. She's completely insane. So it all comes because of the fear of being discovered. Banquo is also killed because of Macbeth's own fear of discovery. And Macbeth, he loses control because of the same fear, his guilt, the fear of being guilty, the fear of being executed as a traitor. So fear governs Macbeth's character in this story. So what do we see? Does Macbeth succumb to this fear that is raising in his heart? No, he doesn't. He goes to the witches. That shows that he had accepted evil. To such an extent, he and the witches, the evil, is like the same. Is at the same plane. They are equal. Macbeth equalizes himself with the evil in the story presented by those supernatural witches. But he shows as well, there is courage. He shows courage, but courage should be reasonable, should be rational. It's not there. Courage without reason also forms a part of his character, along with the acceptance of evil and being fearful. So we get to see what are the different kinds of fear that we find in this story, which is the fear of supernatural, obviously things that are unknown, things that are foreign, things that are strange, the supernatural, the fear of discovery, of the guilt, of the deed, of Macbeth being a traitor, the fear of rivals, Banquo or Malcolm succeeding him on the throne. So those are the fear of rivals. And the fear of desperate actions is desperate actions that generates the fear into the other characters, generates fear into the other characters. So this is all about fear and courage that forms a great part of the story, a big theme in the story Macbeth. We shall move on to the second theme. So the second theme talks about the vision of evil, which is another very, very, very important aspect of the play. Now, character is very important in Shakespearean tragedy, but at times it rises above the action of the play, the action of the story, the plot. But it's nothing, but the plot is but the deeds of the character himself. So it's not completely different, it's not completely separated. And here the character Macbeth, he encompasses, he's a true vision of evil. If evil was here on earth, it would be Macbeth. So he completely personifies the devil in himself. What he does, let us see. Now here the vision of evil is multifaceted. It's got few, we can view evil from different perspectives, from different opinions. Let's see. First of all, the deed that Macbeth committed, that was innately evil, and it affected the individual as well as the environment. It's not only that he did something to the others and he was left alone and he was left unhurt. No. How does it affect in the individual level? How did he do this to himself? Now, Macbeth, a character, was capable of good. I told you, he used to be that glorious person, the glorious warrior, and he fell from that glory, the tragic flaw. So he was capable of good, he chooses evil path. He did not stay in the good path, he chose the evil path. And then in him we see one by one, sometimes he was known for his nobility, that starts to go away. The human qualities in him degenerates and he goes towards deterioration of his character. He sinks, at the end of the story, he sinks into such a despair from where nobody can bring him out. Nobody can change his course of action. What is done cannot be undone according to him. And he is completely away from God. And that is the reason why he visits the witches, who are but just an expression of the evil, the devil, the hell. Alright, they represent the hell, and God is not somebody who we associate with hell, obviously, that he's separated from. He has definitely violated the moral, social and political worlds, aspects in his world. He submits to evil completely as well as the darkness. In one place he says, the stars hide your light, let it not shine upon me. And he is very much comfortable with the idea of darkness in himself. He is destroyed by Macduff in the end, because this suggests that evil someday has to come to a brighter side of life. Macduff represents the brighter side of life in the story. And now let us see how does his deed, his evil deed, affects the environment. First of all, he did something that was completely deteriorated. Okay, that is. First of all, let us see how did it affect the environment. He brought about chaos in the state. He did something at the state level. He murdered a good king. He became tyrannical. He became a tyrant, a traitor, just like Thane of Cawdor himself, the person whom he killed with his own hands, with his own weapons. He became that. He became the Thane of Cawdor and he became the tyrant. There he brought disorder in the world. He disordered in Scotland. The good king died. Nobody knows. Nobody knew what to do. They were uncertain. There was chaos. People were fleeing from everywhere. Malcolm, Donalbain, everybody. People were scattered, and Macbeth himself was scattered in his mind. And that causes the fact that he became tyrannical, that causes in the end the good to rise against the evil in the end. So we know Macbeth was innately evil, because the good people, especially if we talk about the English king who helped Malcolm, was a saint-like king, was a saint-like human being. He comes and defeats him. He renders his help because he too knows Macbeth. That is what proves the fact that Macbeth was truly evil, and we cannot justify his actions at any cost. Duncan meant like a family to him, and he killed him. So here we see this is how he starts. First he brought chaos about the state at the state level, then he does evil at the family level. Duncan meant like a family to him. He was like a kin. He was like one of his, relatives, and he killed him. He destroyed the family values. There was disintegration of family values even in between Lady Macbeth and himself. When he talked about his plan to Lady Macbeth, they submitted themselves to evil, and everything in their relationship became sour. It might feel that they are together, unity, they are united in this crime, but what happens after that? They both are doused into their own mental prisons. They are captured. They are somewhat captured in their mental prisons. Let's see what happens to the others around them. Banquo and his son, they are separated. A family, Banquo is killed, Fleance escapes. The son is separated from his father. He destroys Banquo's family. He destroys the family of Malcolm and his brother Donalbain by, first of all, definitely by killing Duncan, and then by separating the two brothers. One flees off to Ireland, Donalbain does so, and Malcolm goes to England. They are separated. He kills Macduff's entire family, the innocent family, the children, the infants, his wife of Macduff. He completely destroys this family. Now we see his completely accepted evil in him. But what is supposed to be the consequence of this evil? The vision of evil is very well presented, but what is the consequence? Does Shakespeare side along with the evil, or he shows that good appears to be the dominant ones in the end? Let us look at it. So Macbeth not only destroys or does evil at the state level or the family level or to himself in the individual level, he also does evil in the physical universe, at the physical, where the harmony, where the order is destroyed. It's completely in a disorderly fashion. Now in the previous times, in the ancient times, wherever the times that they were living in, it was believed that the king is a representation of God himself, that God chooses the king over the people, who is supposed to look after the welfare of the subjects, like God himself, the representative of God on earth. Okay, and Duncan was such a king. Duncan was a good king. He thought about the people and the people loved him. And Macbeth's deed, Macbeth's act, the crime itself, it talks about how he has committed a crime against God's just system. And there were supernatural sights that had occurred because God's system had been tampered with, because the order, the harmony has been tampered with. So does this continue? What happens? Does evil prevail in the end? Do we see that? If Macbeth has done something, if somebody tries to tamper with God's system, what happens? If it is evil that is doing so, what happens? Evil will destroy itself. The nature of evil is not growth, it is but disintegration. People who resort to evil practices, they might win temporarily, but at the end it is nothing but degeneration, destruction. So because nature has the power to restore the harmony back into herself, restoration is but natural. That is going to happen. Nature will fight back in order to restore everything that is good and peaceful, which is against the nature of evil. Now, evil and good are very well contrasted in the story, a representation of the characters who are presented to be innately evil or to be represented as innately good. Now, characters like Duncan, Macduff, Banquo, Malcolm, Lady Macduff, they all represent the good in the story. They talk about good ideas, good values, and all the dark and gloomy and evil ideas are represented by Lady Macbeth. Macbeth, the supernatural witches, they form the evil component in the story, and there is always a contrast between their ideas, a clash, a conflict between their ideas. What now, if I don't say this, if I don't give this dialogue to you from the play itself, it would be an injustice to Macbeth, because this entire dialogue, it sums up all the action, the energy, the morality of the story of Macbeth. The dialogue is, it was uttered by the three witches when we first see them, doing something in the heath. Fair is foul and foul is fair. It is somewhat, it's oxymoron. It's somehow, we call it equivocal, but it is somehow, it has the opposites, two opposites in one. Fair is foul, which means the good can be bad, or foul is fair and the bad can be changed to good. It doesn't talk about any character. It might be, because Macbeth doesn't become good in the end, obviously. He has to give in to the consequences. He has succumbed to death due to evil thought. And what it generally shows, that the story starts with evil. Fair becomes foul, he becomes bad, he becomes evil, but it ends in good. Foul is fair, he is vanquished, evil perishes, evil is destroyed, evil is vanquished in the end. So this is what's supposed to be. That is the real nature. That is what the order and harmony should be brought out into the world by the good people, by their good efforts. They should act out in the right path. So truth will always prevail and evil will be perished. Now this is the story of Macbeth, an amazing and very interesting story to know, which can give us a deep insight into the human mind, into the human psyche. Now these were the two themes that I've talked about today, and in the next video you will find me describing or discussing deeply the two other themes that are dominant in the story of Macbeth. I hope you have enjoyed watching this. If not enjoyed, there is a lot to learn from this. So thank you for watching this once again.